Hello learners and welcome to your Natural Sciences lesson. So today we're dealing with pressure. But did you know that wind is simply moving air? The movement of air is caused by differences in pressure between one area of the Earth's atmosphere and another. So during the course of this lesson, you're going to be focusing on pressure, what pressure is, how can we measure pressure, and how does it relate to the particle model of matter. Right. For us to be able to do that, we need to set up goals that we need to achieve for the end of the lesson. So what we need to achieve for the end of the lesson is the following. So learners, by the end of this lesson, this is what you should be able to know. Number one, you should be able to explain the concept of gas pressure. You also need to be able to explain how cooling and heating a gas changes its pressure. And then lastly, you need to be able to explain using the particle model theory the effect of changing volume of a gas on pressure of a gas. So what is the effect of changing the volume have on the pressure of the gas? So then, in order for us to be able to achieve these goals, we need to take this entire lesson and break it down into small concepts that we can tackle one at a time. So now, our main concept, our main idea is pressure. So within that one, we're going to be looking at what is pressure. And then furthermore, we're going to be looking at how can pressure be measured. And then lastly, we need to also be able to use pressure and find out how does it relate to the particle model of matter. So how does pressure relate to the particle model of matter? So now, things that you should already know, that we already know about pressure and other things that are relating to pressure are, we know that all substances are made up of tiny particles, and those particles are too small to be seen by even our naked eye. Number two, we also know that the particles are always in motion. So the particles that make up matter are always in motion. So that means if now we have a solid, the particles that are making up a solid are always vibrating. And if we have either a liquid or a gas, then those particles making up that either a liquid or a gas are always moving around chaotically in that particular container that is given there. And then number three, we also know that the particles are held together by attractive forces. So the particles that are giving us the shape that we have for solids, for liquids, and the indefinite shape that we have for the gases is the attractive forces that are holding those particles together. Then the last thing that you already know is that the particles have spaces between them. So all the particles that are making up matter, be it in a solid, a liquid, or a gas, there's always spaces between the particles. But then because you have different matter, then the spaces between those matter, between a solid, a liquid, and a gas, they are different in terms of the size. So with the information that we already know, let's see if whether we can be able to answer the question that is given to us. So the question is, give two properties of the following states of matter. So we have solid, liquid, and gas, and we need to give the properties according to the arrangement of particles and also the movement of particles. So in a solid, how are the particles that are making up a solid arranged, and also how are the movement of the particles that are making up a solid? So what is the movement of the particles that are making up the solid? So starting with the arrangement of a solid, so they are the particles, they are fixed. So the arrangement of particles that are making up a solid, they are fixed, and then the movement is they are vibrating. We know that they can't move, they can't move around, they can only vibrate around a point, vibrating around a point. They are vibrating around a point. And then now, what about a liquid? So what is the arrangement of the particles that are making up a liquid? So we know that the particles making up a liquid, they take the shape of a container. So they take the shape of the container. That is to say, if we put our liquid inside a square container, the shape of that liquid will be square. If we put our liquid inside a rectangular container, the shape of the liquid is going to be rectangle. Same applies if it's a triangle, a square, any shape. So basically all the liquids that we put inside any particular shape will take the shape of that container. Now, what about the movement of particles? So these ones, they are moving around chaotically. They move around so they do not have a specific movement. So they're just moving around in that particular container. They collide with each other. They collide with the walls of the container as well. Now, what about the gases? So the arrangement of gas particles. So it is, we know that there is no fixed shape. So the particles that are making up a gas, they don't have a specific shape. So they will just fill the container that they are in no particular order. So hence we're saying that the shape or the particles making up the gas matter, they don't have a particular shape because they're just moving around in a container, be it in a square, be it in a rectangle or a triangle. That does not necessarily mean that the shape is going to be a rectangle. They will just fill the space in that container. Now, what about the movement of particles? So the movement of gas particles, it is random. So it's a random movement. So it is a random movement. So that means they move around. Also, we can just write it underneath here. So same as the liquids, they just move around chaotically, and then they just move around in a random order. There's no specific movement for the gases, and also they don't have a specific shape, that is the gases. So now, with the questions that we have answered, there are certain words that you're going to be using throughout this lesson. They may be new to you, and if they are not new to you, you just need to recap these words, and if they are new to you, this is what they mean. So we're going to be using words such as pressure, density, and collision. So pressure, by definition, that's now a continuous physical force exerted on or against an object by gas particles that is in contact with. And then density, that's the measurement of how tightly a material is packed together. And then lastly, collision, that's now an instance of one moving object striking against another object. So that another object can either also be moving or be stationary. So now, before we get started with the lesson by looking at what pressure is, we're just going to quickly take an ad break, and I'll see you just after this.